What if your mind, that voice narrating your every moment, was in always telling you the truth? What if the very engine that drives your decisions, beliefs, and dreams is more fragile, more biased, more blind than you ever imagined? Yet within that fragile engine lies the secret to everything, to your creativity, your success, your survival. The way you think determines the way you live. We move through life reacting, assuming, deciding, unaware of the complex machinery humming beneath the surface. It cuts through the noise, the myths, the comforting lies we tell ourselves, and exposes how our thoughts are formed, shaped, twisted, and sometimes manipulated. It walks us into the heart of human cognition and asks, why do we think the way we do? And what happens when we start questioning the very process of thought? And once that illusion breaks, something powerful takes its place. Awareness. Think we're logical, rational, smart. But psychology tells a different story. A story full of blind spots, cognitive traps, shortcuts, and illusions. But here's the catch. Most of us never stop to think about our thinking. The Psychology of Thinking by John Paul Minda isn't just a book, it's a scalpel. Piece by piece, he unfolds the inner workings of the mind, how we form concepts, solve problems, fall prey to biases, and even deceive ourselves, all while thinking we're in control. Minda doesn't preach, he reveals. This isn't dry science, this is human drama, unfolding inside your skull. Because once you understand how you think, you'll never think the same way again. This book matters because it confronts the illusion at the center of our lives, the illusion of rational control. And with awareness comes choice. Let's begin. From the very first pages, the Psychology of Thinking opens not with abstract theories, but with something deeply human. A quiet question echoing in the mind. What is a thought? If these moments feel spontaneous, even obvious. But beneath the surface, something extraordinary is happening. A billion neurons firing. A lifetime of concepts unfolding, mental patterns searching for meaning, connection, truth. Where does it come from? How do we know anything at all? It starts not in a lab, but in your everyday life. When you're deciding what to eat, when you're solving a problem at work, when you're having an argument with someone you love. John Paul Minda introduces us to the foundations of thought by focusing on concepts. Those invisible mental categories that shape how we interpret the world. It makes shortcuts. Those shortcuts become the building blocks of our reality. You see a chair, recognize a friend's face, or understand a sentence, you're not just perceiving. Because once you know your mind's habits, once you can name them, you can begin to see them in action. On the surface, it seems simple. See problem, find solution. But Minda peels back the layers and reveals something startling. Problem solving isn't just about intelligence. It's about representation. It's about how you frame the problem in your mind. Most people fail. Why? Because they don't reframe the box as a tool. They see it only as a container. This is called functional fixedness, a mental block that traps us in old ways of thinking. It's the curse of expertise. The more we know, the harder it is to see things differently. Maybe, just maybe, choose differently. Flexible, molded by culture, shaped by context, and constantly evolving. Minda explains that the mind doesn't store perfect definitions. It stores examples, prototypes, stories. You don't recognize a bird because it has a scientific checklist. Even when the statistics scream otherwise, you recognize it because it fits the mold your brain has built over time. Wings, feathers, maybe a song. To see that these shortcuts, these biases aren't failures. But in the modern world, a world of complexity, noise, and infinite information, those same shortcuts can lead us astray. Their features, they evolved to help us survive in a world where speed mattered more than accuracy. You're thinking in concepts. And here, the drama intensifies. And here's the twist. These concepts aren't universal truths. They're learned. When a manager keeps using the same outdated strategy, when we stay in broken relationships thinking they'll work this time because they did, once, in developing metacognition, the ability to step back, observe, and question our own mental habits, the availability heuristic, for example, leads us to overestimate risks that are more memorable, like plane crashes, and underestimate common ones, like heart disease. Because the mind confuses ease of recall with likelihood. This is the beginning of cognitive economy. The brain is a brilliant but imperfect way of saving mental energy. It simplifies. It generalizes. Logical thought, the crown jewel of human intelligence, turns out to be shockingly prone to failure. Why? Because logic isn't our default setting. Confirmation bias is, we don't seek truth. We seek evidence that confirms what we already believe. We think we're investigating. Really, we're defending. We think in syllogisms, in cause and effect, in patterns, but we're not computers. We don't follow rules. We follow intuition. And intuition, Minda shows, is often built on shaky ground. But this economy has a price. As we journey deeper into the book, Minda walks us into the world of reasoning. Take the classic Wasson selection task. People are asked to test a simple logical rule. Almost everyone gets it wrong. It's a humbling realization. But it's also freeing. From here, the story moves to problem solving. Change the frame, and the solution changes. Consider the famous candle problem. You're given a candle, a box of tacks, and matches, and asked to mount the candle to a wall. And it doesn't stop there. Mental sets, the tendency to keep using solutions that worked in the past, often blind us to simpler answers. This isn't just theoretical. It shows up in real life. When a doctor misdiagnoses a patient by relying too much on previous cases. As the middle of the book approaches, Minda brings us to one of the most fragile and powerful elements of thinking: decision-making. We like to believe we make decisions rationally. We weigh pros and cons. We choose the best option. But the science tells another story. From heuristics to biases, our decisions are influenced, often dominated, by invisible mental shortcuts. Then there's the representativeness heuristic, which leads us to stereotype. To think someone who loves poetry is more likely to be a literature professor than a truck driver. Every page in this section is a mirror, showing us not just how we think, but how easily we are misled, not by others, but by ourselves. But Minda doesn't stop at exposing flaws. He invites us to understand them. They helped us flee predators, make snap judgments, find food, avoid danger. And so as we approach the midpoint of the journey, the question becomes urgent. If we can't trust our thinking, who can we trust? The answer, as Minda hints, lies not in abandoning thought, but in learning to think about thinking. It's a subtle shift, but it's everything. Because in that moment, the moment you realize you are not your thoughts, but the one watching them, the door to real intelligence opens, and the journey continues. There is a moment in the journey through the psychology of thinking where something changes. The book stops. It's feeling like it's describing the mind in general and starts feeling like it's describing you. The patterns it outlines begin to feel familiar. The flaws a little too personal. You start seeing your own reflection in every example. The mental shortcuts, the snap judgments, the subtle rationalizations, they begin to echo back at you like quiet whispers from deep within your consciousness. It doesn't merely distort how we select information. It shapes how we remember it. Memory itself becomes a tool, not of truth, but of coherence. Then comes one of the most sobering explorations in the book: group thinking. As inherently social beings, our thoughts are rarely fully our own. We conform, collaborate, mirror, and argue. Minda explores the paradox of collective reasoning. Sometimes, groups outperform individuals, but often they don't. Groupthink, social pressure, and the diffusion of responsibility can lead us astray. We trust authority even when it's wrong. We choose confidence over competence. It's a mirror, a companion, and a quiet revolution. Not one that overthrows governments, but one that shifts how a person sees themselves. And that kind of revolution changes everything. And far too often, we silence our doubts for the comfort of fitting in. We recall what supports our existing beliefs and quietly erase what challenges them. Minda doesn't leave us trapped in the maze of cognitive limitations. System 1 is fast, intuitive, emotional. System 2 is slow, deliberate, analytical. System 1 is the gut. System 2 is the judge. And the truth is, most of us live in System 1. We move fast, decide fast, trust our instincts. But the real strength lies in activating System 2, in pausing, reflecting, and questioning. He offers a way out. Through metacognition, critical thinking, and cognitive flexibility. Because when we start thinking about our thinking, we no longer see our minds as fixed machines. We begin to see them as dynamic systems capable of growth and change. We can learn to think better. But it begins with the willingness to slow down. According to Minda, this is the true threat. Not ignorance, but the illusion of knowledge. We believe we know. We believe we've assessed the facts. But often, we've only built a comforting narrative and then stopped searching. That's when the second half of the book hits. Not with condemnation, but with clarity. He emphasizes that the goal isn't flawless logic, it's awareness. It's the ability to recognize when we slipping into mental traps and gently pull ourselves back out. It's learning to resist the seductive comfort of easy thoughts and instead choosing the difficult path toward truth. It's the realization that our thoughts aren't just reactions, they're creations, and we are their creators. The narrative returns to decision-making, but this time the stakes are higher. It's not just that we make poor decisions, it's that we make them confidently. This introduces the illusion of control, the false belief that we're more in charge of outcomes than we really are. People regularly overestimate their influence over randomness. Gamblers believe in hot streaks. Investors see trends in chaos. We convince ourselves we're steering the ship, when in truth, we're often drifting with the current of our biases. Among these biases, perhaps none is more dangerous or deeply ingrained than confirmation bias. In an age where data is endless and attention scarce, that illusion is more powerful and perilous than ever. Minda next delves into analogical thinking, our ability to solve unfamiliar problems using familiar patterns. It's one of the mind's most powerful tools. But even here there are traps. Analogies can be deceptive. We assume that because two situations seem alike, the same solution will work, when in fact, superficial similarities often conceal deeper differences. Problem-solving reveals itself as a delicate balancing act. It requires not just memory, but flexibility. Not just knowledge, but a willingness to rethink. Yet again, awareness is offered as the antidote. Because despite its flaws, the human mind is remarkably trainable. One of the most profound ideas in the book emerges from dual process theory, the understanding that our minds operate using two systems of thought. It's hard work, it takes patience and practice, but it's transformative. In the final chapters, Minda brings all these insights together. In the end, The Psychology of Thinking is more than a book. At first glance, a non-fiction book like The Psychology of Thinking may not appear to have characters. There's no daring protagonist, no fire-breathing dragon, no sweeping romance unfolding across time. But look closer, and you begin to see the story hidden in plain sight. And at the center of it is you. You are the hero of this narrative, the thinker, the flawed yet fascinating human, trying to make sense of a world that's far more tangled than it seems. And the dragon you face. It's not external, it's internal. It's cognitive bias, the quiet, invisible distortions that shape your thoughts, cloud your judgment, and lead you astray without warning. John Paul Minda doesn't present abstract theories. He paints living portraits of the mind at work. Your mind, my mind, all of ours. First, and what emerges is not just insight, but a confrontation. The realization that our greatest adversary isn't ignorance or complexity. It's the overconfidence in our own thinking. It's the process that defines who we become. Asterisk personal challenges. Because when we fail to reflect on how we think, we risk living a life dictated by illusion. Illusions of certainty, of control, of knowing more than we truly do. But when we begin to understand our mind's limits and accept them with curiosity instead of shame, we can see the world more clearly. And perhaps more importantly, we begin to forgive ourselves for being wrong, for missing the mark, for being human. Our beliefs, our decisions, our doubts, our breakthroughs, every single one flows from the endlessly mysterious mechanism of the human mind. But as Minda makes clear, the mind is not a camera faithfully recording reality. It's not a book that seeks to make you feel smarter. It's a book that makes you feel seen. In all your mental messiness and quiet brilliance, it doesn't just dissect thinking, it honors it. And when you finish, you don't walk away with a sense of mastery. You walk away with humility. And strangely, that humility becomes the seed of real strength. It's a storyteller. And like any storyteller, it embellishes, forgets, reshapes. It strives not for accuracy, but for coherence. The book rests on a simple but profound premise. Thinking is not just something we do, and that's the trap. When faced with uncertainty, our brain rushes to stitch together a clean narrative. It longs for clarity, even at the expense of truth. So we fill in gaps, invent reasons, justify decisions, not because we're dishonest, to step back, to notice the machinery running behind the scenes, to not just ask what we believe, but why. That shift in perspective, from being inside the thought to observing it, is the beginning of wisdom. It's not about being perfectly rational. It's about recognizing when we're not. But because our minds are built to soothe discomfort, not to dwell in doubt, many of our thinking errors don't arise from bad intentions, but from speed, from our craving to resolve ambiguity before we've even fully understood it. Despite all the mental traps and blind spots, and to offer something deeply empowering. Metacognition, the ability to think about our thinking. 2 quotes from the book capture the emotional core of this message. Asterisk, asterisk. We are not blank slates. We are editors constantly rewriting the story of our experience in real time. Asterisk, asterisk, and second. To know how to think well is to know how to live well, because every action we take is downstream of our thoughts. These aren't just insights, they're invitations. This is where the psychology of thinking hits deepest. Because when you finally grasp how easily the mind can fool itself, you also discover how powerfully it can grow. To think well is to live well, and that is a transformation no work of fiction could ever capture more beautifully. By the final page of The Psychology of Thinking, something shifts inside you. This isn't just another psychology book filled with academic terminology and abstract models. It's a mirror one that forces you to look directly at the machinery of your own mind. You don't walk away feeling more powerful. You walk away more aware. It's about intellectual humility. It's about learning to question the lens before you focus the camera. When you pause before reacting. When you notice your assumptions rising like smoke. When you catch your own story mid-sentence and ask, is this true or just comfortable? About realizing that the sharpest mind in the room is the one that doubts itself just enough to keep learning. And that awareness, quiet, unsettling, luminous is everything. Because the real takeaway of this book isn't about memory tricks, logical models, or even bias detection. Minda shows us that the battle for better thinking is not one in libraries or lecture halls. It's one in the small, silent moments. And in doing so, it might just help you build something stronger in its place. If you're someone who values clarity in a foggy world, if you've ever been wrong and wanted to understand why, if you want to raise the standard of your thinking, not just to sound smart, but to live intentionally, this book is for you. But fair warning, it won't coddle you. It will challenge you. It will unsettle the ground you stand on. So here's your call to action, not as a reader, but as a thinker. Start watching your thoughts like you would a magician's hands. Curious, skeptical, respectful. Notice the tricks. Study the illusions. And most importantly, don't trust your mind, blindly train it. Because if you want to change your life, your habits, your relationships, your world, it begins with a single question. It's quietly repeated until it becomes second nature. What is my mind doing right now? That's not just psychology. That's liberation. And the psychology of thinking might just be the key you didn't know you were searching for.